Hi boys and girls, and welcome back. It is Monday and it's time for our daily reading of Appleblossom the Possum. Today we start on chapter 11, so remember on Friday we left with Appleblossom. They had gone on their first hunt and she kind of lost track of time and it was daytime. And so let's see what happens now. How does Appleblossom handle her daytime? Here we go, chapter 11, page 76. The world of daytime is loud and much more chaotic than the night. Appleblossom has never been this tired, but she tries her hardest to stay awake. It helps that there are so many intriguing things to see. It is still early in the morning when an enormous yellow metal monster appears. It isn't a car or truck, but it must be a family member of those beasts. The monster stops in front of the house and its red eyes flash in the front and the back. The same little people who earlier was the dog named Columbo comes out of the house and goes to the yellow metal monster. Appleblossom studies the creature as she walks. The people has brown fur on top of her head that is now tied back with a red bow. She has large eyes that are the color of the little pebbles lining the stream through the canyon in the hills. They are brown, but bright swirls of something close to the green are there too. There are other people inside the metal monster. Some of them wave their arms as the little monster from the house approaches. The peoples laugh. She is acting happy. Appleblossom listens. The monster's giggle is delicate, and it certainly doesn't sound like it belongs to an animal that is mean and ferocious. No, the little monster sounds sweet. The metal monster opens his mouth, and the people climb inside. Then the yellow monster closes his mouth and moves away from the cement stage, and Appleblossom finds herself sad to see the people go. As the day progresses, the dog comes out 2 more times. He has a routine which involves lifting his leg, running in circles, and communicating with the red ball. The only other activity he undertakes is sniffing the ground, vigorously. And yet he never once cranes his head and looks up. If he did, then he would see the small possum clinging to one of the top branches in the tree. He is, Appleblossom decides, not a very complex life form. The sun is higher in the sky when the yellow metal monster returns. The little people gets out, and Appleblossom watches as she makes her way back to the house. She stops before the entrance and leans over some purple flowers. Appleblossom feels certain that the little monster has caught sight of a juicy caterpillar, or maybe a plump spider. But this isn't the case. The people pushes her face close to the petals and she simply inhales. She smells the sweetness. Appleblossom wants to shout from the treetop, "I love flowers too!" But she doesn't dare. And then the little monster plucks one of the blossoms and disappears into the house. Appleblossom waits for the rest of the daylight to see the little people again. But this doesn't happen. It takes a long time for the sun to work itself way across the sky and slip below the distant hills. But finally night falls. Appleblossom makes certain that the dog has just been out to chase his red ball, and once he's back inside, she starts down the tree trunk. Appleblossom appreciates the fact that she has thumbs. She can pick up snails and pill bugs and sweet fallen apples. Watching the dog use his mouth for everything has been an eye-opener. All he can do with his clumsy feet is scratch at the ground and send dirt flying in all directions. It's possible, she decides, that not having proper hands and feet is what makes him run in circles. Appleblossom has survived a big test. She has stayed out all day and now returns to the mulberry bush with her head held high. Antonio sees her first. His ears shoot skyward as he springs up on his back feet to get a better look. "Appleblossom!" he shouts. He and Aimlet are waiting in the exact spot where they had been the night before. "What happened? You didn't come back." "It was horrible and scary and also incredible and amazing. Is that possible?" Antonio grins, and almost all of his 50 teeth can be seen. "If you say so, then it is." "Was Mama mad at me for not being here for bedtime?" Antonio isn't sure how to answer, but Aimlet blurts out, "Mama wasn't here either. We thought you might be together." Appleblossom is surprised that Mama didn't come back, but she sits down to tell her brothers everything that she has seen and experienced. She talks about the people and the dog and the red ball. She speaks until she can't form another sentence. With her brothers at her side, she finally has to drag herself into the mildewy umbrella against the wooden fence. The folds of the rotting canvas are like a hammock, and it is there with her tail curled into a pillow that she falls fast asleep. She's nocturnal, but she sleeps through the long night and all through the next day. She is cozy and safe, and most of all, alive. Chapter 12, page 83, boys and girls. Atticus and Alan and Alicia and Alberta and Ajax and Abdul haven't been seen in 4 nights. Then Augusta and Alejandro don't come back after Alfonso disappears. And Mama has not been spotted by anyone, even once. The only reason they know that something awful hasn't happened to her is that twice when they returned at the end of the night, there was a piece of bruised fruit underneath the mulberry bushes, and both times it is tied with a bow made from a strand of spaghetti. 2 days later, when the full moon begins to roll up the sky to let the sun peek over the hills, only Antonio and Amlet and Appleblossom wait in the meeting place under the mulberry hedge. Appleblossom's forehead scrunches up and her eyes get cloudy as they fill with tears. It's just the 3 of us now. Amlet slips his head out of the leaves to look into the grass, which he knows is dangerous in the low light. He doesn't see anyone coming. What do you think happened to everybody? He chews on a scrap of sticky stuff that he found flattened on the cement, and then he answers his own question. They've moved on. That's what happened. Appleblossom's whole body tenses. But I don't understand why. We're family. Antonio's voice is sad. We can't keep coming back to this mulberry hedge. Animals can smell us. Amlet, you were right. The others have moved on, and we're making a mistake by not following. Amlet suddenly gets stubborn. Well, what if I don't want to move on? What if I want to ride on Mama's back? What if I want to work on my performances? What if I want to put on a show? Appleblossom looks at Amlet and tries her best to sound hopeful. Just the 3 of us could run through the acting exercises. We could still work shop as seen. Amlet's voice is but a whisper. I'm not acting right now. My sadness is real. Antonio scratches an itchy spot on top of his head. Appleblossom knows he does this when he's thinking hard. Finally, he says, we have to accept that it's just us now, and who knows how long that will even last. Antonio leads the way, but a brown snake has already claimed the spot, and a reptile makes an awful face. He sticks his purple tongue out and hisses in their directions. No vacancy, he gets his message across. The possums scurry and take refuge inside an old tire that has been abandoned under the ivy on the hillside. They huddle together. They huddle next to one another in a cozy ball. The sun is cracking the horizon when Appleblossom whispers to her brother, there was room for all of us in that drain pipe, even with the snake there. But if you're not wanted, there's no amount of space that will make the difference. And Antonio and Amlet agree. Chapter 13, page 90. After 12 hours of rest, the three possums wake up to the splendor of a new dark night. They make a plan to meet by the gopher hole under the oleander shrub. Then they separate to seek their fortune, which means to find good breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Appleblossom keeps her long nose to the ground as she hunts for the tasty pillbugs and earwings and beetle grubs. She uses her hands and feet to pull up the weeds and to lift stones. She surprises herself an hour later when she realizes that somehow in the grassy yard where the dog lives with the little pebble-eyed people. She knows that she should be afraid, but she can see the red ball in the shadows of the grass, and that means the dog is inside. In the dark, she can see the house more clearly. The lights are on, and she makes out two very large monsters who are staring at the magic light box on the wall. Then the small people comes into the room. She doesn't look at the box. She turns and stares out the dark, see-through glass. Appleblossom doesn't dare to move. What if the littlest monster screams and shouts and alerts the big people? What if the dog finds out she's in his yard? Appleblossom holds her breath as the little creature walks closer to the glass. And then the monster does the craziest thing. She raises her hand and she waves. Appleblossom pulls herself onto her hind legs so that she's standing tall, and she raises her front paw and waves back. Appleblossom can see that the little people is very happy. She is now smiling and laughing, and the two monsters staring at the light box turn to see what's going on. This scares Appleblossom, and she drops into the ground and takes off for the cover of the bushes. She runs until she's out of breath, but when she finally stops running, she is happy too. She likes the little people. They both appreciate flowers. At the end of the night, Appleblossom meets up with Antonio and Amlet, and they find an excellent sleeping spot inside a cinder block wall. This is a dry and very comfortable place to call home, at least for a few nights. Once they're happily in a cozy den, Appleblossom clears her throat and says, "Tonight was special." Amlet yawns, but Antonio looks interested when he asks, "Did you eat a frog?" Before Appleblossom can answer, Amlet says, "I love frogs, especially the legs. Were you down in the big drain pipe? I hear lots of frogs croaking in that gully." Appleblossom shakes her head. "No, I didn't eat a frog." Amlet is disappointed. "Too bad." Appleblossom struggles to find the right words. "I made a friend," she manages. Amlet rolls over and mutters, "Who needs friends?" But Antonio is intrigued. "Mama said not to talk to skunks. Did you cozy up to one of those striped stinkers?" Appleblossom shakes her head. "No." Amlet yawns again, this time in a way that sounds too big and like he's making some kind of point that he doesn't care. "So tell us," he says. "The sun is coming up and we need to sleep. Who's your new pal?" Appleblossom inhales deep and then exhales slowly. "I think I found a special monster." Amlet sits up fast, banging his head on the cement block and yelping with pain. "What?" Antonio is even more alarmed. "Why would you find a monster?" Appleblossom realizes that her big news is going over big, but not in a good way. She stammers, I didn't mean to. One thing led to another." Her two brothers are no longer consumed with fatigue. They look consumed with concern. Appleblossom can hear it in Antonio's voice when he says, "What were you even doing around monsters?" "I went back to the same yard where I spent the day. There are good things to eat over there. And I found worms and flies and snails, and even a dead mouse. I think an owl dropped him." Amlet is easily distracted. "How was a dead mouse?" "Tasty, I bet." Appleblossom manages to nod. "Yes, a bit chewy, but very nice." Antonio isn't going to be sidetracked by dinner discussion. "I don't care if there were dozens of dead mice. You shouldn't be spying on monsters." The hair of Appleblossom's back stands up. "I wasn't spying." Amlet's voice now sounds like a growl. "This will lead to nothing but trouble." Appleblossom tries to hold her ground. "I was thinking that both of you might want to come with me and see her. Up close, but very safe." Antonio answers before Amlet can. "Why would we want to do that?" "Research," she says in a low voice. Amlet makes a face. "What's research?" Appleblossom pulls her tail close to her chest and ends the conversation. "Forget about it. Good day. Sleep away." The littlest possum shuts her eyes and hopes the discussion is over. Antonio tries to explain what research is, and Amlet moans for a while about having a headache. Antonio keeps talking about safety, but both of the possum brothers are asleep long before Appleblossom drifts off. She knows she's making a mistake telling them about monsters. She doesn't want to have secrets, but maybe that is the part of growing up. Some things, she decides, might be better not shared. All right, boys and girls, thank you for joining me today on our reading. We will start on Tuesday with chapter 14. I hope you guys are really enjoying this book, and we will see you soon.